The banking and finance sector is a sector that connects every other sector. I mean, every other sector cannot function without the banking and finance sector. In your assessment, how did this sector perform in the year 2023? Just give us an overview.
Well, I think it's if there's any sector that have performed in terms of President Tinubu economic policy, I think it's the banking sector. We've seen those numbers in terms of results. They say result is what really is key in any business, and we've seen those results. We've seen those bottom lines. We've seen all the numbers in the banking sector, but also those numbers as a result of revaluation, or what do you call it, floating of the currency, and that and that. And so definitely you want to get the real profit from the banking sector, and that also was there, but not like what people normally will have expect for a long time. But outside of that, I think the banking sector has been very resilient, has been one of the best in 2023 in terms of loan to the real sector, in terms of innovation, in terms of a lot of things have gone well for the banking sector this 2023, especially since President Tinubu came to power. They've been like your colleague in the studio were talking about some of the technology aspect of the banking sector also has been there with a lot of issues here and there. But again, that's the teaching process when you're trying to do some new things. But outside of that, I think the banking sector, the financial sector has been one good news, one highlights, whatever you want to call it, in 2023 for the current administration. I think that's the only sector that's a really thick and is really resilient. And again, with the new CBN administration coming into power, recapitalization, we might see a lot of activities in that space going forward. But for now, I think no cause for alarm, even if your colleague in the studio said the true violation of the liquidity of the banking sector might not be so real. I think he has a point, but that point will be driven only for the second tier banks, or what we call the third tier banks. But the first tier bank, I think they are very, very liquid, expanding globally, and also bringing in those profits into their bottom line.
All right, Muktar, glad to have you join us once again. You look more refreshed now in the impact holiday. All right, that's on the lighter note. Now, let's look at one of the activities that shaped the banking sector in the year 2023. One of them, in fact, the year started with the aftermath of the redesigning of the Naira. So talk to us, of what extent has this shaped the performance of the banking industry in the year 2023, and what are the lessons, as we approach 2024?
Thank you. I think if for lessons, have we really learned a lesson from that? I don't think so, because we're having those challenges towards the end of the year now. But again, what did it shape the banking sector? I think it did, in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of using the mobile app of the banks, in terms of using of POS terminals, in terms of more Nigerian coming into the banking space, in terms of now cashless policy is becoming everybody affair. I think that is, for me, the key driver of the cashless policy, the most positive of it. We were able to drive over 60-something% of Nigerian into the financial sector, into the banking sector, into the financial space. Even if you say fintech, also the fintech also will have to rely on the commercial bank to get some of these deals off the line, and also the mobile company. So definitely, for me, that is the change. That's one of those drive that we saw in this policy. But outside of that, I don't think the lessons learned, did we really learn any lesson? Because towards the end of this year, we are beginning to see those challenges come in. What did we not do right? I think timing is all about our challenges these days. We come up with good policy, but our timing is always very, very wrong. That policy of the cashless policy, even if it attract a lot of Nigerians into the banking space, it killed the informal sector. Practically over 60% of the informal sector will wipe off by this cashless Naira redesign. And also now I hope we've not seen almost 10 to 15% being wiped out, especially in the festivity period, where cash is king in Nigeria, because we don't have the technology to really drive this cashless policy, especially the rural area. And a lot of Nigerians will be celebrating their Christmas in the rural area. So for me, that is the negativity in what we've seen. I mean, the negativity, the negative thing about it and the lessons learned is get the policy, get ready if you want to see positivity in some of these policies. They have come with their own challenges, but those are challenges that are not insurmountable. But again, the regulators need to be ready for what they want to do. They must come up with a strategy, both the short term, the medium term, and the long term. I think that is what is missing currently in terms of the cash issue in Nigeria. But aside of that, like I said, the positivity of it all, a lot of Nigerians have come into the banking space. The negativity of it all, a lot of informal businesses have gone out of service, and they are trying to creeping back into the economy. And here we came again with the same issues coming up again.
So how do you think the banking and finance sector supported businesses all through the year in terms of loan provision and credit facility?
Well, if you look at what CBN is telling us, I think they've done well in terms of, I mean, I'm talking about what CBN is telling us in terms of the numbers and the loan to the real sector, about 1 point something trillion has gone to the real sector. And you could also see that in their balance sheet in terms of non-performing loans have gone a little bit high because of this lending to the sector and because of the economic crunch. And these sectors, they are not able to pay as when due. That also affected their balance sheets in the short term, but they believe in the long term, this will definitely help your balance sheet. I think they've done well in that area. I think one area the banking sector have done well is in consumer lending, especially for those that have paid job. I think the banking sector have been able to leverage into those people, and there's a lot of intensive product for consumer lending. And that again, you know, our economy is a largely driven consumer driven economy. And so when you start lending from that sector, it has a snowball effect on every area of the Nigerian economy. I think that's one area the banking have really done well, but they've not been able to do lending, the high ticketing job, because of liquidity. And that is why the CBN is saying for us to be able to do that, we're building a $1 trillion economy, then we need to start to begin to think of a recapitalization. I think that is where they have a lot of work to do. But in terms of lending to the real sector and the consumer sector, I think the bank has performed relatively very well in 2023.
I would like to have your take on the performance of the Central Bank of Nigeria. The year 2023 is quite significant. We had a transition between the former CBN governor and the present governor. In fact, the first quarter of 2023, you had Emefiele as the governor of CBN, and then Kadizo came in almost like the second quarter of the year. How will you assess that Apex Bank in the last 1 year, especially when it comes to the issue of its core function, which is monetary policy?
I think it has been the good, the bad, and mostly the ugly. I think the good was in terms of we've not seen any bank go down. We've seen banks trying to access the CBN window in terms of liquidity has not been that high like it used to be before. So in terms of liquidity, fantastic. In terms of the bad, you know what the bad is, they've gone into areas that are not their core areas. And we've seen that reflect in some of the policy in terms of lending that they did directly to some of these companies that they felt that were going to drive Nigerian economy, especially in the agricultural sector. We've seen that at the end of the day, by what we are seeing from the investigative panel, we are seeing a lot of, though that is still subject to a lot of things, but we are seeing a lot of revelation in terms of this anchor borrowing scheme. And then the ugly in the monetary policy, I think I think they've been very ugly. When I mean it's been an ugly in that space is that we've seen inflation keep going up, and they keep doing same, and nothing seems to be happening because we are just doing a copy and paste issues to our issues. Because you hike rate in the US, you hike rate in the UK, you could see the positive impact on that on their economy. The CBN as a monetary policy we've not done well. It's been very ugly because they have not looked at what is really causing the inflation, which is the volatility of the exchange rate. And that has been very ugly. If you remember, we started the year at about 460, and here we are today. I'm even talking about the parallel market. Here we are today, we are doing over 1,000. So in that area, I think the CBN has not performed anything near good because of the kind of drive they have come in. Yeah, that was, you could say that was largely what Emefiele did. But again, in the second quarter, we saw Cardoso came in. I mean, maybe half year. You say it's a change of guard. You say forceful change of guard. And so, and we saw Cardoso came in and again trying to do what he thinks he should do, float the currency without liquidity in the system. We saw the Naira have suffered a lot of battling. We've seen that inflation has kept going high. They seem to not have the idea of creating stability in the FX market. And when they do that, they will directly affect inflation. But for now, I think in 2023, the CBN, if you tell me to give them mark, I think they scored 20 over 100.
Right, that's a very poor score, 20 over 100. But let's look at attempts at increasing financial inclusion. We still have the financial inclusion rate in Nigeria just a little over 50%. So we have about 48% of the Nigerian population underbanked. Now, looking at the mobile banking and other efforts in that regard, what's your assessment for the banking sector?
I think if you just have 48%, remember before now, you have almost like almost 70% of Nigerians on bank, especially in the rural area. And so if you are doing 48%, you've done well. But again, credit should go to the fintech companies. They have been the one that have really driven a lot of Nigerians into that space. But again, that has also been driven by CBN also policy. So you must not, when they do well, you need to commend them. I think in the financial inclusion, I think we have done well. That's where I think CBN, like I said, that's where I think CBN scored little. Even if the policy that drove people into financial inclusion, the cashless policy, was wiped off some sector of the economy, but it brought a lot of Nigeria into that space. And so for me, I think in terms of financial inclusion, they've done well, and we are seeing more innovation coming in from that space, especially that the banks are now having holding companies that are strictly developing a product that have to do with payment system. So we'll see those innovations continue in 2024. I expect it to be the height of the banking reform in 2024. It will be one of those areas that you see a lot of competition, and we see a lot of banks coming up with strong fintech companies also to compete with the already strong fintech companies. Or we might even see some bank acquiring some of these fintech companies. So I think they've done very, very well in that space and in terms of financial inclusion. I think that's where they got the 10 marks from me, and the other 10 marks is coming from every other thing they have done. So I think in terms of financial inclusion, you could say they've done well.
Now, let me take you to the ongoing accusations as regards, or the one trailing the acquisition of Union Bank, Keystone Bank. They are still in the realm of allegations, there are counterclaims here and there. But what do you think will be the impact of this on the banking sector? And how can this be managed so that the trust deficit that could arise from this could be minimized, if not eradicated?
I think it's not good for a banking sector, especially if you are a special investigator and your report is in the public domain, or just after 24 hours after you publish it. I don't think it's good because those reports are also subject to liquidation. I mean, it's already a lot of things. It's not, we're just sharing one side of it. And again, like you said, Keystone Bank have not made any statement, but we've seen statement from Titanus Bank and Union Bank have said it is not true. It's not good at all, especially with the way the special investigator have handled this issue. I'm very, very disappointed. It's somebody that I really have a high regard for. I wonder how you get such sensitive information leaked in the press. You've published it already, and now you are now inviting Union Bank. I thought you should have done that before now. Bring them and then make your final recommendation based on your interview with them. Emefiele also said when they came to see him in Kojo prison, nothing like that was mentioned. So it's becoming a sensational report. And like you said, it's not good for the banking sector. because that would drive them a lot of confidence. And once the international committee does not have confidence in your financial sector, especially your regulator, I think that's the beginning of the end of your financial system. I think we should get off this sensationalism. They should tell us the right thing. If there was infringement, definitely you cannot just overrule it like that. That's all. Do they have the power to say the shareholders, if they do not appear in their committee, they will have to relinquish their shares to the federal government? I don't think they have. It's only the court that can make such pronouncements or judgments, not you. That is just an investigative arm of it. But even EFCC cannot make that without a court judgment. So you can't be saying that now. That again is playing to the gallery. That again is making people to feel that there's no rule of law. I think we need to tread cautiously because we are dealing with the Central Bank of Nigeria. And some of the people you are accusing have done this and are still working this, because it's not just Emefiele, it's not just the deputy governor, you're talking about the controllers. So I don't think this current investigation have been handled well. I think there is a lot that should be done that could be right, but again, you don't bring such report to the public domain. So, I mean, without even being gazetted, without even having a white paper report on it, and we keep on having this report day by day, for me, it's very, very disappointing on the part of the special investigator and also on the part of the federal government that those reports were handed over to. Because what we have seen in Nigeria is media persecution when they know that they cannot actually prosecute them in court. There are many issues that we have seen with that. So you go to the media, you give them all the names. At the end of the day, you go to court and court keep finding all these issues, and you begin to say the judiciary is corrupt because you've not done your homework well. So for me, really, really disappointed.
So what do you think would be the likely impact of this on the banks concerned regarding customers?
I think impact, I don't think it will be much again. When you look at the banks involved, Titanium Bank and Union Bank. Union Bank is a big, strong bank. It's a bank that has been here, I mean, the oldest bank in Nigeria. Why people are concerned, why can the oldest bank be acquired by the youngest bank in Nigeria? So, but those things happen. So I don't think it's those reports are not talking about liquidity. They are not talking about that they are not functioning in terms of their duties to their customers. They are always saying that the way that those banks were sold is the issue, not in terms of liquidity or any other things that could affect the bank fundamentals. But again, it's all about shareholding. Somebody owns it. You want to really know who the owner of. I don't think it's a big problem.
All right, let's look at one of the critical issues raised by the CBN governor, which for the year 2023 is also crucial: the issue of recapitalization of the banking, sector. Now, he gave that hint during the CIBN dinner that it will be necessary for banks to recapitalize if the target of the $1 trillion economy is going to be something to go by. What do you foresee in the coming year? What do you think should be the priority for the CBN come January, especially when it comes to the issue of recapitalization of banks in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you. I remember when he made that statement. After that statement, they've gone silent. We've not heard anything from them yet. There's always a modality for recapitalization. Remember, we moved from 2 billion over by 1,000% to 25 billion at the time of Christopher Chukwuma Soludo. But again, we must remember that after that, I remember Soludo said no Nigerian bank will ever fail. And in 2008, we saw all the banks tumbling down. Most of those banks went down, and then the intervention of Sanusi Lamido through the AMCOM wind vehicle. We've seen that a lot of banks were acquired, and then presently now we enjoy a little bit of stability. But I think the bank has learned from that, and that's why a lot of them are having shareholder form above trillion. Some of them have made profit above trillion also in their last year. So definitely, especially the tier 1 bank, like I said, and even the tier 2 bank, 1 or 2 banks, 2 or 3 banks in the tier 2 banks also are really doing very, very, very well. Now, when it comes to recapitalization, you see, sometimes we just focus on the banks, but we are not looking at the regulators. Are they also are they also strong enough to regulate a $1 trillion dollar economy? And if are they where did we have the capacity? Because if you remember what happened after the recapitalization of the banks from 2 billion to 25 billion, what we saw then was a regulators that were not up to their game, did not have the manpower, did not have the capacity, did not have the knowledge base to handle bank with high capitalization. So we need to begin to say, you are recapitalizing. How efficient will you be in monitoring these banks so that we don't get to what we had before, when banks had so much liquidity and they were going into almost every sector of the economy. They were not having risk assessment of some. So at the end of the day, it crumbles. So for me, recapitalization of banks are not really the issues. When you go to develop economics of the world, there are banks that are called state banks. There are banks that are called regional banks. There are banks that are even called local government bank or county banks. Everybody, the recapitalization doesn't have to be, I can say, I just want to service a particular area. So my recapitalization should be different from somebody that want to do regional, global, or so I think they need to do a lot of work there. And again, my main challenge still remains in the area of monitoring, regulation. Do they have the capacity? Do they have the manpower to really monitor this bank when these banks are highly capitalized? Because you can't be saying, oh, I'm growing a $1 trillion economy, and yet your regulators are not $1 trillion in terms of regulating the sector, which is very critical for the successful successibility of that policy that you are going to drive.
Some challenges in the banking sector that come with some negative impact, such as high cost of transaction. And if in recent times we've seen that the experience of Naira scarcity has resurfaced again. And just like during the Naira redesign period, where it was difficult getting cash within the banking hall, but the POS attendants were having cash. What are your thoughts in these areas?
Ordinarily, it shouldn't be an issue. That's why they are small. That's why they're into business to cushion those gaps that you think the financial sector are not meeting. Then you go to the PS and they are able to meet it. But like you said, the challenge is how are they able to meet such gap? And again, the main bank is not meeting it. But we must look at the POS terminal as the last resort for the rural area. POS terminal was not supposed to have more than, I think, 20,000. Because it was meant to give people 10,000, 5,000, 3,000. That's what it was meant for. So, but again, if you look at what has happened, you see POS terminal doing transaction into the millions, and that is not supposed to be. That goes back again to this regulation thing I'm talking about. So, aside of that, again, you say that the POS terminals are having more funds than the banking sector. You go to the bank, you don't see cash. You go to the POS, you see cash. That is supposed not to be an issue, because that is why they are there, to meet your need when the banking sectors are not able to meet your need, especially in small cash. But the challenge is that when you don't get it in the banking sector and you go there, you seem to have it above and beyond the normal speculated, and that's where the issues are. I think that is a Nigerian problem. That's a corruption problem. Because by the time you investigate some of all these POS terminals, they are also owned by people that are actually working in this bank. So when things like this happen, then the security agent will begin to call, can you sweep into action? Because it's not rocket science to know who is withdrawing, who is not withdrawing. The CBN has all the tools to do that. And if your CBN to come out and say, look, we are having challenge because some people are sabotaging, some people are carrying. For me, sometimes it's just like the government then saying that we know the people behind this terrorist act, we are going to come after them. You know then why are you not going after them? You are telling us, and they should desist from it, otherwise you come after them and your people are dying. So I think that's the same thing with the banking sector. The regulators need to wake up and wear the big stick if it has to.
Now, let's do a review of some of the decisions made by President Tinubu in the course of the year. One of them is the decision to float the Naira and also maintain double exchange rate, talking about the parallel market and the official market rate. What has been the impact of this decision on financial services in Nigeria, and how do you see it turning out in the year 2024?
I think the impact has been negative in terms of businesses, especially consumer businesses, conglomerate business that are import-driven, had to suffer a lot of losses. The telecom companies also have suffered a lot of losses. So definitely when you look at it from that standpoint, it has not been a good policy. Again, when you look at it again in terms of the exchange rate, instead of the whole idea about floating the nice to maintain a single exchange rate, but what we've seen that the parallel market rate is still high. Again, that policy was a good policy in terms of floating. You want to attract investors, you want to attract foreign direct investors, want to attract portfolio investors, but no investor will come into your market when there is no stability in your exchange rate. And why is there no stability in the exchange rate? It boils down to liquidity. You cannot float your naira without liquidity. That means you leave your currency for market forces, and market forces are not the best of people to handle, to deal with when it comes to because they are when it comes to currencies, because they are in there to make profit. So once you are not able to meet it, they will definitely want to maximize their profit. So my challenge in this policy, the policy is good, but for you to float the currency, you must have liquidity. Unfortunately, we don't have this liquidity. And this liquidity, people say, why do you need liquidity? The liquidity is not just all about, the liquidity not just having, our foreign reserve is very buoyant. No, the liquidity is about intervening to make sure you maintain it. Because no economy in the world says, I'm not involved. CBN is not going to involve, all their banks are not going to, their regulator bank are not going to be involved in trying to make sure stability in the currency, because people say, you float the naira, you leave it to market forces. Yes, you float the naira, you leave it to market, but there are times when you see that market forces beginning to be greedy, then you intervene with much liquidity to stabilize the rates. So you don't have those liquidities, so that's why we are where we are today. Has that policy worked? It has not worked in 2023. Will it work in 2024? I think so. If what the government is saying, I say if what the government is saying, NNPC is saying that by 2024, we will not be importing fuel the way we used to import. Dangote refinery will come on strength, at least for PMS and other, for PMS in January. Okay, we'll see, we're seeing NNPC say Port Harcourt refinery is now working. We'll see supply into the system. That will reduce the pressure on the naira, because a lot of the pressure that comes to the naira as a result of those that are trying to import fuel into the country. And NNPC, at the point we're not able to remit funds into the federation account because of that they have to refine it on subsidy. That has gone, so that will attract liquidity into our foreign reserve. And also we expect that Nigeria in the diaspora will begin to come in with remittance, because they're coming out from COVID downtime into reworked period now. And even report we got from CBN that they remitted over $20 billion into the economy in 2023. So, and that they did in spite of the exchange rate volatility. So I think so that will help. Again, remittance will come from oil. If we are able to maintain a stability for a period, maybe between 1 to 2 months, you'll see that the foreign investors portfolio or direct will start coming in, and that will create liquidity in the system that will stabilize the rate. So I expect the rates to be stable in 2023 going forward, 2024. But again, it has not really worked in 2023 because of liquidity. It's not that it's not a good policy. For you to do such policy, you must make sure you have liquidity. That we don't have. But I think in 2024, we could see a lot of liquidity in the system, especially in terms of our foreign reserve, growing to a point whereby we begin to have stability will come to the exchange market and the FX market, and that will drive in investors, and that will drive down the exchange rate.